You are listening to Creativity in Healthcare, hosted by Dr. Matthew J. Taylor, editor of the textbook Fostering Creativity in Rehabilitation. In this podcast, we explore the science and processes that enhance your own creativity and that of your related healthcare organizations. True healthcare reform hasn't happened yet, but working together, let's explore how we can nurture the next new evolution in healthcare delivery.
Welcome to Creativity in Healthcare. I'm your host, Matt Taylor. Today I have the privilege of exploring creativity in healthcare through the experiences and expertise of Dr. Sari Roth-Roemer. Sari is a medical psychologist and the director of Intuitive Psychology, PLC, in Scottsdale, Arizona. Her innovative perspective on the role of psychology in the brain highlights the intuitive powers of the mind, helping to teach people to listen more closely to their own intuition and find balance in their lives. She lectures and presents at conferences and healthcare facilities across the country on topics of mind, body, spirit balance. Her current work explores the role of intuition, spirituality, in the psychological healing process, as well as the practical application of recent scientific evidence linking mindful awareness, compassion, and meditation to neural network changes in the brain. She's also a contributor to our textbook, Fostering Creativity in Rehabilitation. As with all our episodes, you'll be able to find our show notes and links at www.healthcarecreativity.com. Welcome to the show, Sari.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to doing this with you.
Yeah, we live 3 miles apart, and it takes us forever to get together, doesn't it?
I know.
So, in addition to what I already shared with our audience, Sari, you're also a very engaged mother of a wonderful young man, and you're supporting both of your parents as you age. And like so many in our generation, we've got no shortage of responsibilities. And yet you're out here pushing the edge, leading this new way of approaching psychology, which is now over 100 years old, right? It's the field. And I guess kind of share with our listeners to start with a little bit of your journey. How did you get to this point? And then we'll build off from that.
That sounds great. Well, I'm lucky enough to have found a profession that just suited me, that I just love. I love going to work every day. I was talking to a patient about that today, and I think ever since I was a little girl, I've really been interested in talking to people and, more importantly, listening to people and what's going on in their lives. So even when I was little, my girlfriends would come to me and talk to me about their problems. I don't know why that was, and I loved it. I loved giving advice, and I loved hearing what they had to say, and most of all, I just loved seeing them feel better and get better and solve their problems. So I've been doing it since I was a kid. When I was in high school, they have psychology in high school now, and they didn't really have it back when I was a kid. And so I ended up going to college just knowing I wanted to study psychology and learn more about it. And I loved it. My father was a physician, so he had some friends who were psychologists that I could follow around and do some internships, and the rest was history. It was just the way that my mind kind of thought.
Right. And did you ever see yourself in that professional development as somebody that would also step out and suggest there might be even better ways? Or were you kind of just, well, I'll learn what they're teaching me and I'll repeat what I've been taught?
Okay, well, that was the setup. I think you know the answer to that.
Chapter 22
yeah,
of the book,
exactly. Right? Yeah, it's not that I don't like learning what's taught. I love learning what's taught. I would have been a lifelong student if I could have gotten paid for it, that's for sure. But then I like learning what I'm taught and doing something creative and outside of the box. So it really sparked an interest in me. When I first was in graduate school, health psychology was an emerging field. There really wasn't. Mind-body medicine was brand new. Sure. In fact, my one of my advisors on my dissertation committee actually said, because I had proposed a biopsychosocial model, and she said there's no such thing as biopsychosocial. And I said, well, yes, there is. There was a man named, I think it was Richard Amen, who first came up with psychoneuroimmunology, which is kind of where it began, where they talked about the psychology affecting our immune system and our bodies. Those were some of the first studies where they looked at medical students who would get sick after their final exams because their immune systems were depressed. So that was some of the early work. And I was really fascinated by how the mind and the body work together. My father, being a rheumatologist, had seen that. And so I think that's where I knew I wanted to go, is to explore that mind-body connection. It was brand new, so it was so exciting back then. And I would go and speak at rheumatology conferences, and it was just so much fun for me. Every paper I wrote in graduate school, I would make about medical psychology and just kind of forged that field, and ended up and was lucky enough to get to do a residency in that at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, where we really were looking at how the mind influenced people's ability to survive cancer and to cope afterwards.
That was your master's program?
That was my doctorate. And that was actually my residency. My doctorate was looking at women with rheumatoid arthritis and how their relationships impacted their arthritis.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. That was a whole biopsychosocial model. Sure. Of course, as is not surprising, people who were in good marital relationships, it had a protective effect on them, and they coped better with their rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they had experienced less pain. It was wonderful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, for our listeners, undergraduate in psychology, is that what you had?
Okay, so
kind of what your academic...
I just kept on that psychology track. It was undergraduate in psychology at Smith College. I went to Harvard for my master's. I thought maybe I would study children of divorce, but no, that's not really what happened. I got a great education and ended up going and studying biopsychosocial aspects of medical illness, and I have loved it.
And then your doctorate.
That was my doctorate, and then I got I did my residency at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center and University of Washington School of Medicine. Yeah, it was great.
Oh, no
I got
kidding.
to work with some wonderful people.
That's fantastic. So, did you ever in that time kind of feel like you were sticking out, though? I mean, did it seem like a lot of your classmates were just kind of going along with doing the routine stuff, and here you're pushing this biopsychosocial? Did you feel peculiar, or was there a...
Well, I wouldn't use the word peculiar probably, but I was raised in a family where different was seen as better. So okay. I liked that, although I'll tell you, psychologists are a different group of people. So I think we all were kind of exploring our own areas. When I finally got to Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center and got to work with people like Karen Sorelia and Janet Abrams, who were just like-minded people, I felt like I had found a home. And so it's not that I felt like I stuck out, but I was kind of doing my own thing. Sure. And finally, when I got into my residency, I just found my groove and felt so supported. See, I'm really lucky in that I've had several really fabulous mentors throughout my life. When I was in graduate school, Sharon Robinson Kirpius was looking at medical psychology as well, and she kind of helped me along that direction. Okay. And we actually created a group in graduate school for like-minded people. Okay. And then, like I mentioned before, when I got into my residency, to be able to just work with like-minded people. And I've had such a good job. I've had such a good experience with mentors who have really supported me. You read about competition with mentors, and I've never had that. Just really was taught so much and kind of lifted up and encouraged to follow my own path. And I really hope that I've been trying to do that with my students now too, who I work with in medical psychology. Yeah, so you get to pay it backwards. Mentor, exactly. I love it. It's one of the most gratifying things that I get to do is work with students.
Yeah, and so I think, I do a lot of the yoga work, and it's got its baggage around its language. So when we hear intuition, sometimes that kind of comes laden with, that's not scientific. Do your students, are they apprehensive about that, or how do you address your colleagues' concerns that intuition means non-empirical, not based, grounded in.
It's so interesting. So my practice 3.5 years ago, I changed the name to intuitive psychology to reflect that I really wanted to help my patients learn to listen to their own intuition. I really wanted to highlight that. I don't know that that's necessarily a brand new concept in psychology, because I think in psychology we do try to help our patients find their own answers, much as you like to teach your patients to listen to their bodies and find their own answers as well, in a physical and psychological sense. So yes, I think absolutely when I brought that in, I did it a little bit to be a little tricky to get people to think about it. And because when we hear intuition, we do think of psychic intuition. But I think knowing the now is pretty important, and I think we forget about that. And
so say some more about knowing the now.
So knowing the now is really paying attention in awareness to what's going on right now and listening to what your intuition is telling you in the moment about what you need to do for yourself right now. We get so caught up in looking into the future. I think that's why we're so intrigued by those special people who do know how to look into the future and listen to their intuition in the future. But most of us mortals, we need help just learning to listen to our intuition in the now. It gets so covered up by fear, by anger, by anxiety, by sadness. Those things really shut down our ability to listen to our own answers. So when you go into a psychologist's office and you learn to heal those aspects, to manage those human emotions so that they quiet down a little bit, so you can really listen when you ask yourself, what is it that I need to do right now in this moment? You can hear your own answers. And so I do have to explain that to people. Just the other day I was talking to a physician who wanted to refer to me, and she said, now explain intuition, what you mean by that. And I said, I'm not psychic.
Okay, gotta clear that one out of the way, yeah.
I just help people listen to their own answers.
Yeah.
Which is a bigger task than you might think sometimes,
Well, yeah.
right? I mean, we can all think about that. We've all had times where we just get so hyped up and bent out of shape that we forget, oh, wait a minute, let me calm down. I'll know what to do.
Right, exactly. And as you were saying that, I kind of got tingles because you were kind of describing the body politic right now in this election season, where I think we're seeing from different levels, different groups, either overwhelmed by an emotional state or invitation to go, well, what's really important, and without getting political, it just seems like there's that whole spectrum of that. You know, we talk about systems, you know, we're individuals, but we're part, that isn't culture a huge effect on whether people have permission to sense or permission to speak once they have sensed their intuition?
Yeah, you know, I think you're right. I think that we are individuals that are connected to each other, to, you know, everyone and everything around us. And what's interesting is when we get scared, we can get overstimulated by all the information that's coming in. So I think a lot of people, again, I'm not going to get political. I am just going to look at it as a systems. But when people get excited or scared, especially about an important decision like an election, and don't know what to do, I think they kind of shut down and get overwhelmed, and it does interfere with their ability to listen.
And they probably don't have much, we don't have, as culture, I'd say as a generalization, we probably aren't very skilled at then expressing anything that's other than politically quiet or polite too. So there's even in the lack of dialogue we see, you know, the destructive one-liner. Nobody can have a conversation.
Yeah, they're talking at each other, not to each other sometimes. Right. And then when other difficult things are going on in the world, you know, we're hearing about one suicide bomb after another, and that overwhelms us too. That can make us feel so hopeless and helpless. And some of the work that I've been seeing, I have a friend, Dr. Niobe Way, she is an old colleague of mine from Harvard master's class. And we're just Facebook friends now. I haven't seen her in years. But the work she's doing with love, she's going to have in New York City, I think it's like April 20th or something, she's having I forgot what it's called, a Day of Love. They're meeting in Washington Square, and the whole idea is to meet this idea of more continued violence with love and compassion, and to really build on that. Yes,
Wow.
well, because that's where we can get our power. We forget when people are coming at us with violence and anger, there's this gut reaction to kind of respond with more anger and violent thought, and we forget that we can find power in love and compassion as well.
Sure. Yeah, and as so when you look at getting them to sense or intuit the moment what their state is, and that's, I think, again where we bridged, because then there's an embodied sensation that goes along with that. What kind of things do you invite your clients to try to begin to actually sense that, and then be able to make that loving, creative response versus a reactive, possibly destructive
Absolutely,
response?
because that is the bridge to get there. You're right. Because if we listen to our hearts, we're always going to find love there.
Right.
So there are some things that we can do to help us tune into our intuition. So first of all, if someone comes into me and they're really depressed or anxious, we're going to work on managing that depression and anxiety, and we're really going to focus on how they're contributing to that. And what I mean by that is usually we're contributing to our own anxiety and depression by the personal narrative that we're carrying around with us. What we say to ourselves makes a huge bit of difference. And so when I can get people to be aware of how they're speaking to themselves, almost always their first homework assignment for that first week is, I want you to listen to what you're saying to yourself. I want you to really pay attention. When you're feeling rotten, I want you to tune in and ask, what are you saying to yourself right now? Because most people, if I ask, what are you saying to yourself? Well, I don't talk to myself.
Right.
They say, well, yes, we all talk to ourselves. Like throughout the day, constantly, we don't shut up. We're always talking to ourselves. So when you're feeling bad, use that as a cue. Listen in. What are you saying to yourself? And you're going to be surprised. And I want you to label that. If you find yourself saying something, ask yourself, is that helpful? Is it kind? Yeah. If it's unhelpful and unkind, I want you to say, well, that's not very helpful or kind. I want to work on being kinder and more helpful to myself.
Self-editing kind
exactly.
of thing.
Exactly. And self-awareness, so that you realize you have a choice, that you can look at things differently. And then that's what we'll do in therapy, is we learn what those choices are, because we kind of get caught in these bad habits where we forget that we have a choice to speak to ourselves differently or to look at a situation differently. So learning to look at that situation, and once people get that power back, that, oh, these are my thoughts doing this, I can change how I'm feeling, then all of a sudden that kind of dims, that negative voice dims, the more positive, helpful voice comes up, and lo and behold, we can start work on sitting quietly and listening to your own answers and your intuition.
Okay. But yeah, they have to first be reading the
Absolutely.
script, right?
Exactly. They need to correct that so they can clear away some of the negativity. The other thing that I ask people, and I can ask you now, think of times in the past where you knew the answer and you didn't listen to it. Has that ever turned out well? Right? No. And we all, people listening to us, we can all think of times where we thought, oh, why didn't I knew better. Yeah. And then you can also think of times where you knew and you thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to listen to what my intuition is telling me. And it almost always works out well.
Yeah.
We forget that. And I think all of us humans have that experience of it. That's why I love teaching and talking about this, because this is something we all are capable of.
Yeah. So when you talk about it, as describing your work, the mindful awareness we've been discussing, and meditation then as a later tool that they can begin to employ to really hone in and become acutely aware of not only narrative but physiological changes in that, right? And insight, essentially.
Absolutely. And you've given me that cue a few times and I haven't picked up on it, but you're right. I do ask people to listen to their bodies. I do ask them where they're feeling things in their bodies. We don't call intuition a gut reaction for nothing.
Right.
We often feel it in our guts. Now, not everybody does. Some people feel it in their chest or their throats or their heads, but a lot of us will feel it in our gut. And that is a good thing. And I know you teach your patients to do that too, to really listen to our bodies and what our bodies are telling us.
Right. So we've got mindful awareness and we've got meditation. So what's this compassion piece? Where's that fit in that tribe to become a triad?
It does. So remember when I was talking about that personal narrative? That personal narrative applies obviously to us because it's a personal narrative, but then it also applies to others in the judgments that we're making on others. Mm-hmm. And so what we're saying to ourselves about ourselves as well as about other people in our lives and other situations in our lives makes a difference. And what I found and what the research shows us is when we put a compassionate lens on that narrative, everything changes. It heals things. I recently, this past fall, gave a TED Talk called #CompassionHeals. I know my son did not like that. He was like, what's with the hashtag, Mom? But I did it because I liked that little punch of remembering, that gentle little punch of remembering compassion does heal us. And compassion can heal our world. And the whole idea that when we put a compassionate lens on things, it softens. And it allows us to open up and connect with other people.
Wow. Yeah. And that was what in doing the work for the textbook, looking at Joan Halifax's model of embodied model of compassion. She just did such a brilliant job of
her TED Talk was just fabulous.
Isn't that something? Yeah. So we'll certainly have your TED Talk in our show notes too, because it's nicely done. And
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you just look like you're having fun with the powerful dress you had on and everything.
Oh,
there's the whole package.
My big flower.
That was great.
You know what? It was terrifying and exhilarating all at the same time, and I loved it, and I loved what I was talking about. And doing the work to put that talk together was so wonderful because I did get to see beautiful talks on compassion, as well as really looking at the literature that shows that when we, for example, combine compassion and meditation. So there's that ancient compassion meditation version of may I be filled with loving kindness, may I be healthy and well, may I be peaceful and at ease, may I be happy. And that when you say those powerful words for yourself and for other people over and over in less than 10 minutes, you do that for 30 days, you literally change your brain. It is the coolest thing. I loved looking at that research. It literally changes gray matter in your brain in those areas that are responsible for compassion. How amazing is that? This combination of ancient wisdom and neuroscience coming together and really showing us that we change the world by changing ourselves.
Right. And that it's a couple weeks ago, the Dalai Lama was in Wisconsin, at the Make the New World, or We Make the World or something. And his whole thing came back to changing the system is about changing your practice and your behavior. It's the individual, right?
It is. There's Dr. Dan Siegel has written about interpersonal neurobiology. Interpersonal neurobiology, that is a real thing. You and I talking to each other right now, we're changing each other's brains.
Exactly.
Whoa. Awesome. That makes me happy. You're super smart, so if you can help change my brain.
Both ways, kiddo. I don't have no Harvard degree. I just have a Baylor degree.
That's pretty good.
So when we're, for our listeners, hopefully they're tuning in to maybe scratch an itch of, I've got a sense that there's something different I'd like to do, or what I'm doing right now is dry and maybe doesn't have the spice that I want it. Do you talk to colleagues? I know you talk to your clients, but or maybe from your own experience, like how when you stepped up and moved over a new edge, like the TED Talk or contributing to the book, or all the different great things you've done, how does that affect your next creative adventure? Or do you ever get used to stepping out again, or is it always a new edge and a new push, or what? How do you?
Oh, that's such a great question. Do you know what? So for me, all my creativity, truthfully, comes from being in connection with other people. So because I was open to meeting new people, so getting to be friends with you, so that when we were talking, you invited me to do the book, being friends with the mayor of Fountain Hills, who was helping to run the TED Talk, so he invited me to do that. it was through my connections. I've been so lucky. Connections are the spice of my life. They always have been. Like I said, when I was 7, what did I like? I liked talking to my friends and my friends telling me their problems and making connections with them. So by making connections with other people and learning from other people, when we're having this conversation right here, I was so excited to come do this with you because this is sparking my brain. This is making me think, getting inspired from you, getting inspired from the work that you do helps me be inspired to make my next moves. So yes, I'm always looking for change. I when I haven't had change in enough time, I'm looking for what's the next thing, and it's always my friends and talking to them and their connections with them and their good ideas always gets me thinking.
Gets you going, yeah. So and your son Aiden's going to graduate in a few weeks, right?
Oh, yes.
I know. But,
yes, actually, yes. I'm so excited for him.
I found that transition when the last one left. It opens another space, though.
See, that's exactly how I feel. I'm so excited for my beautiful 18-year-old son, Aiden, to graduate. I've been watching his wings sprout on the back of on his back for so long, and they're totally ready to fly and go. And I actually am so excited for him. I am so excited for me because when he goes and spreads his wings, then I get to start my next chapter and spread my wings even more.
And what's that going to be?
So I think that that's the book that I've been talking about for so long that's put together on intuitive psychology. Because, when you're a single working mom, you're putting all your energy there. So getting to watch him and support him now from a little bit more of a distance will let me go ahead and finish that book, go do some retreats, go do talks at different places around the country, maybe come visit you in Nebraska.
That'd be great. Exactly.
So I am really excited about the next opportunity. And that's the thing that you bring up. It's so exciting when new chapters come up, we automatically are a little wary and fearful of them because they're unknown, and so we're humans, and so we get scared of the unknown.
Sure.
But then just that little flip is, yes, but it's so exciting because it's opportunity. What will it be? I wonder what it will be. And when we let ourselves go to curiosity, that's when the wheels in our brain get to start turning. We get to be creative and wonder what's coming next.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And just having that void, Jen and I keep talking about the void of me stepping out of clinical practice and being up in a farm in the middle of nowhere, and yet it's really, really exciting. It's both terrifying and
isn't that great?
Exciting, yeah.
I love saying that anxiety and excitement, fear and excitement, opposite side of the same coin. And when you feel it, to tell yourself, no, I'm going to flip over to excitement now. And I'm telling you, you're such an inspiration for me that you're doing that, because I see that as my next step too, is really, if I do clinical practice, having it be more of a web-based clinical practice, I think. I'm really working on embracing technology, and again, you're my guru on that too. You're doing wonderful things on that. This is my first podcast. I'm so very excited. Right. Thank you. Yes.
So, and kind of talking about that two-sided coin, in the book we talked about the two-sided coin of creativity. There's the creative idea on the one side, which is kind of the fun thing, and when people hear the title creativity in healthcare, they think, oh, it's about painting my office a different color or something, but we're really talking about bringing something new, useful, and that will be adapted into practice. And it's great to have, let's have a biopsychosocial approach. Then we flip that coin over, and then there's the enactment, or actually making it happen.
Mm-hmm. The practicality of it.
Well, and actually the engagement, getting the change to happen, getting it to be implemented, trying it out, getting people to show up at your office to participate in it.
Right.
How do you deal with that when you started off with the idea, and I know we've both been playing around, but let's try this class and let's offer this workshop, and how do you, as far as for our listeners to know that there is that period of growth and frustration and prototyping, I guess would be a good way to put it. Most things just don't happen. Good idea, flip it over and it's a reality, right?
Exactly.
We've had a little bit of that.
So for me, when you're saying that, the three words that come to mind are bravery, faith, and patience. So that you have to be brave and say, I'm just going to do it. This is scary, but I'm going to take this leap. My intuition's telling me I really want to do this. I need to do this. When I switched from a hospital-based practice to this private intuitive psychology practice, I felt a little bit like I was cliff diving, but I imagined just going to clear water below me.
Okay.
I had faith in myself that this was the right path and that my intuition was correct, and that because I think intuition is always correct. And so even if it doesn't seem correct at first, because sometimes it leads you down weird places first, but usually you end up at the right place. And then patience, because things happen in their own time. We don't have control of the timing of things. And I guess I'd add a fourth one, which is perseverance, that goes along with the patience. So you're patient, but you keep going. You keep pushing ahead. Did you? I'm sure you did. You saw the film The Secret. And I don't know what you think about it. And some people love it, and some people don't like it. But I think you can learn something from everything. And there were aspects of it I really liked. And one of the things they talked about is when you have an idea, it's like a little seedling. And sometimes we don't wait long enough for it to sprout. We walk away, but that doesn't mean that it's not germinating underneath the ground. And so we need to just keep watering and have faith that it's going to sprout.
And that's what our co-presentation on this whole process between psychology and physical therapy is going to be, when we finally get that sucker to sprout.
We're doing it.
It's
We're going to
gonna
get
happen.
it to sprout because so many people are interested in it already.
Oh yeah. And then it's how do we do it?
Exactly.
Wow. So I am so excited to hear. I can't wait to watch this unfoldment of your next chapter. Because it's such an exciting time to watch your little boy take off and then space and jump out there.
New beginnings are wonderful.
They are, yeah. And as Mrs. Taylor would remind us, new beginnings are also new deaths, right?
They are.
Right?
They are.
There's that other side of that coin too, and I've heard it said the first step of creativity is destruction.
Interesting. And letting go too, right?
Right. And in letting go, the release or whatever, but we have to destroy our old patterns. We have to do, you have to make the first mark on the clean canvas.
Yes.
And so there's always there's always going to be a loss because we're shifting to something different.
Absolutely.
So, and then.
So that normalizes those feelings that come up. That's why we're scared.
So So. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to find you?
So you can go to my website, which is Intuitive Psychology PLC, Personal Liability Company, PLC.com, intuitivepsychologyplc.com. And there's a place where you can click to contact me. My blog you can also find there. And there's also on the very, very bottom a link to my YouTube channel and my Twitter channel, if you wanted to find that, all my social media. And you can also find me if you just go to YouTube plain, just go to YouTube and type in Sari Roth-Roemer. My name's on that, Sari Roth-Roemer. Then my TED Talk will come up and some of my meditations will come up too.
Oh, good. So there'll be some material here.
Yeah,
and if people want to bring you in to do a presentation or a continuing medical education experience,
absolutely. I go around the country talking to people, other professionals, organizations. I love doing that. Yeah, I'll talk to anyone, anywhere.
All right. Well, this has sure been fun. And now we get to open that little bottle of wine you brought over to the house and go hang out with Mrs. Taylor. So we're going to say goodbye to our listeners.
Thanks for listening, you guys. This was so much fun.
Right. And again, the show notes are at healthcarecreativity.com. And go ahead, sense where you are now, feel the feelings, and identify that intuition, and then step out, right?
Absolutely. Just, your own answers. Close your eyes, take a breath, and ask yourself, what is it that I need to do? Let yourself be quiet for a little bit, and you'll hear the answer.
Exactly. Thank you, Sari.
Thank you.